Hey everyone, welcome back to Philosophy versus Science. Here's something that's been messing with my head. What if everything you think is real is just shadows on a wall, and true reality, including God, exists in a perfect realm beyond what you can see or touch? That's what Plato was arguing 2,400 years ago with his famous cave allegory. But here's the twist. He believed this perfect realm wasn't just philosophical theory. It was where God, perfect goodness, and eternal truth actually exist. Today we're resurrecting the man who basically invented the idea that physical reality is just a cheap copy of perfect spiritual reality. Plato argued that the highest form, the form of the good, is what we call God. But modern science suggests our brains just evolved to see patterns and meaning where none exist, creating the illusion of perfect truth and divine purpose. You are the jury. Here's what I need to know. Are we prisoners in a cave of material illusion with God as the ultimate reality beyond? Or do our brains just create beautiful stories about perfection to cope with chaos? Plato, welcome to 2025. I have to be honest, your theory of perfect forms feels impossible to defend now. When people have religious experiences, we can watch their brains light up. Temporal lobe creates mystical visions. Anterior cingulate processes transcendence. Your realm of perfect forms looks a lot like evolved pattern recognition, creating the illusion of divine reality. There's no perfect realm, just neural networks making sense of incomplete data by imagining ideal patterns.
My friend, you observe the shadows these experiences cast in the physical brain and mistake this for the experiences themselves. When someone glimpses perfect justice, perfect beauty, or the form of the good, what you call God, they are not creating an illusion. They are remembering their soul's true home.
Tell me, where did you acquire your standard of perfect, by which you judge copies as imperfect? How can a material brain, shaped by random evolution, recognize eternal truths? That's just how brains work. We extrapolate from good to better to perfect. No mystical realm needed. We evolved to recognize patterns, predict outcomes, imagine improvements. The idea of perfection isn't mysterious. It's just taking better to its logical extreme.
But listen carefully. You claim mindless evolution produced minds capable of recognizing mathematical truth, moral law, logical necessity. Does this not strike you as miraculous? If these discoveries are merely useful fictions for survival, why should you trust them as genuine insights into reality?
Because we can test them. Mathematical predictions work, scientific theories make accurate forecasts, but your perfect forms don't predict anything measurable.
They predict the most important thing of all, that this physical world participates in something greater than itself. Every time you recognize that an action is truly just, a proof is genuinely valid, an artwork is authentically beautiful, you are encountering the eternal forms, the divine patterns that give meaning to temporary existence.
But that's circular reasoning. You assume perfect standards exist, then use our ability to recognize them as proof they exist. Why not just say, we evolved approximate standards that help us navigate reality?
Because approximate implies a perfect standard you're approximating toward. Every time you say an action is more just or a theory is closer to truth, you invoke the very eternal standards you claim don't exist. Without the forms, without God as the source of perfect goodness and truth, your scientific enterprise becomes meaningless preference.
Wait, you're saying I need God to do science? That seems like a huge leap from your cave allegory.
Not a leap, the logical conclusion. The form of the good, what you call God, is the source of all truth, beauty, and justice. It's what makes the other forms knowable, just as the sun makes physical objects visible. Without this divine source, You have no reason to trust that your rational discoveries correspond to anything real beyond temporary survival advantage.
Let me get personal here. I've had moments, watching a sunset, holding my daughter, seeing acts of incredible kindness, where I felt touched by something perfect, eternal. But neuroscience shows these experiences correlate with specific brain patterns: decreased default mode, increased gamma waves, flood of oxytocin and endorphins. If perfect forms exist in some divine realm, why do experiences of them depend so heavily on brain chemistry?
When you witnessed that act of kindness and felt touched by perfect goodness, did you think interesting neurochemistry? Or did you recognize something eternally valuable about justice and love? Your science describes the material conditions accompanying these recognitions. It cannot touch their truth or meaning.
But that's just the feeling of meaning, not actual meaning. We're pattern-seeking animals. We see purpose in sunsets, agency in storms, moral significance in random events. Why isn't the experience of divine perfection just another case of our brains creating meaning where none exists?
Because unlike random patterns in clouds, the recognition of perfect justice, truth, or beauty illuminates everything else. It provides the very standards by which you judge other experiences as meaningful or meaningless. Remove the forms, remove God, and you lose the foundation for distinguishing truth from opinion, right from wrong, beauty from mere preference.
But evolution explains moral intuitions. Fairness helped our ancestors cooperate. Beauty recognition helped them find fertile mates and safe environments. Justice feelings helped maintain group cohesion. No perfect realm required.
Yet again, you speak of evolution as if it had intentions. Evolution helped, evolution selected. But evolution is supposed to be mindless. How can mindless processes reliably produce minds capable of recognizing genuine truth and authentic goodness? You're smuggling in the very intelligence you claim to explain away.
That's a really good point, actually. I do talk about evolution like it's designing things, but it's just selection pressure over time.
Selection toward what end? Survival? But the truths humans discover, mathematical theorems, moral principles, aesthetic insights, often serve no survival function whatever. Yet you trust these discoveries as genuine knowledge. Why should mindless evolution accidentally produce minds capable of transcending evolutionary purposes and glimpsing eternal truth?
Maybe consciousness is just a byproduct. Once you have survival-relevant thinking, abstract thought comes along for the ride.
A remarkably convenient accident. That mindless matter should spontaneously organize into minds capable of mathematics, morality, music, and the contemplation of God. Does this not suggest that mind, divine mind, was present in the process from the beginning?
You're doing what religious people always do, finding gaps in scientific explanation and inserting God.
But I'm not pointing to gaps in your knowledge. I'm pointing to the very preconditions that make knowledge possible. Why should there be discoverable truth? Why should rational souls be capable of recognizing it? Why should material shadows participate in eternal light? These aren't puzzles to be solved. They're the divine foundations that make puzzle solving possible.
Here's something that honestly keeps me up at night. The deeper we dig into reality, the more mathematical it becomes. Quantum mechanics, relativity, chaos theory, it's all equations describing invisible patterns that somehow govern everything. We're discovering that physical reality might be fundamentally mathematical, informational, mind-like. Are we finding evidence for your realm of perfect forms? Or are we just projecting human mathematical thinking onto meaningless data?
You've stumbled upon the greatest truth. Physical reality participates in eternal mathematical forms, and mathematics itself participates in the form of the good, the divine source of all truth and beauty. Your equations work because they describe the eternal patterns by which God structures reality.
But notice, you resist this conclusion not because of evidence but because of materialist prejudice. I resist it because mathematical patterns could have evolved naturally. Maybe universes with stable mathematical laws survive longer, so we observe only the mathematical ones. No divine mathematician needed.
Multiple universes. Now who appeals to unobservable, untestable hypotheses? You criticize belief in God as unscientific, then postulate infinite, invisible realities to avoid the obvious conclusion that this cosmos shows signs of divine mathematical intelligence.
Fair point, but even if reality is mathematically structured, why does that require your specific God? Why not just say, the universe is inherently mathematical without invoking divine purpose?
Because mathematics itself points beyond the material. When you discover that an abstract equation perfectly describes physical phenomena you've never observed, you encounter something eternal breaking into time. The fact that timeless mathematical truths govern temporal physical processes suggests both participate in a higher reality, what I call the realm of forms, what you might call the mind of God.
But if God is perfect goodness, why is there so much suffering, disease, disasters, cruelty? Doesn't this count against a divine realm of perfect forms?
The existence of suffering presupposes the existence of souls capable of recognizing that things ought to be otherwise. But whence comes this ought? Your very ability to judge reality as imperfect requires knowledge of perfect standards, the forms of justice, goodness, and beauty that transcend material circumstances. The problem of evil assumes objective moral truth, which itself points toward the form of the good as the source of moral law.
That's clever, but when a child dies of cancer, when earthquakes kill thousands, how do you reconcile that with perfect divine goodness?
The same reality that produces suffering also produces souls capable of recognizing suffering as wrong and working to alleviate it. This moral consciousness, this participation in perfect goodness despite material limitations, is perhaps the strongest evidence that souls belong ultimately to the divine realm, not to the material shadows they temporarily inhabit.
Plato, I have to admit something. When we started, I thought your theory of forms was ancient mythology, but you've made me think about why I trust mathematics, logic, and moral intuitions at all. Maybe the question isn't whether perfect forms exist somewhere else, but whether human reason is capable of recognizing universal truths that transcend material circumstances.
You begin to see. The cave is not a prison, it's a starting point. Physical reality points beyond itself toward the eternal truths that give it meaning. Every genuine insight, every recognition of beauty or justice or mathematical truth is the soul's remembrance of its true home in the divine realm.
The truth now rests with you. Give your verdict. Think about this honestly. When you recognize that 2 + 2 = 4, when you feel that cruelty is genuinely wrong, when you see beauty that moves you to tears, what are you encountering? Are these just useful fictions created by evolution or glimpses of eternal truth? Plato argued that physical reality is like shadows on a cave wall, real but incomplete, pointing toward perfect divine reality where God exists as the form of the good, the source of all truth and meaning. And modern science reveals the mathematical elegance underlying nature, the reliability of logical reasoning, the universality of moral intuitions, but it cannot explain why any of this should be possible if reality is just matter in motion. Are we prisoners watching shadows of divine truth, yearning to turn toward the light of perfect reality? Or are our brains just creating beautiful illusions of meaning and purpose, where none actually exist? Some of you will trust that material processes can explain away every apparent glimpse of the eternal. Others will see in reason, morality, and mathematical beauty evidence for the divine realm that gives meaning to material shadows. What's your verdict? Does God exist as perfect reality beyond the physical world? Or do we just project perfection to cope with imperfect material existence? Drop your verdict in the comments. Are you ready to question whether everything you see is just shadows of deeper divine reality? And if you want to see which philosopher challenges us next, maybe Nietzsche arguing God is dead, or Aquinas with logical proofs, hit subscribe. The journey from shadows toward divine light continues, but only with your courage to turn around.